All right. See if we have anyone else popping in here.
Madison, while we wait, I just want to mention Dolores. I don't know if you left contact information in the sign-in sheet. I would be more than happy to either myself or one of the students do a little research into your question so we can get you a little bit better, more precise answer. And just
that'd be great. Yeah.
Directly. Okay. I can also check with, I don't know if you know Katie Myers. She used to head the MICA project. She now runs the immigration clinic at WashU. So she's very plugged into the immigrant community and knows a lot about resources for immigrant and immigrant families in St. Louis. Could also check with her, and so we'll kind of do all that and then get back to you with the answer to your question. So
that'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ken. Well, welcome to Breakout Room Run. Really excited to have you all here, especially those of you who are coming back for another meeting. Really appreciate that. So I want to give us some time to quickly just kind of go around and say your name, your pronouns, and this might be a loaded answer. A one-word response. I was going to say to how you're feeling today, but that might not be allowed. So a one-word response to what you're excited about for fall. So I'll do, or I guess it doesn't have to be one word. It could be like a sentence, but I don't want like a paragraph. So, and I could start to give an example. My name is Madison Orozco. My pronouns are she, her. And I am excited about being able to wear a jacket and like a vest outside and not feel too hot. And I'm going to pass it on to someone. And then after you go, you can pass it on to someone else. So I'm going to pass it to Anna.
Hi, so my name's Anna and I go by she, her, her pronouns. And I'm also very excited to be able to wear sweaters, and I'm excited for the brisk weather. And I'm going to pass it on to Dolores.
So Dolores Sanchez, she, her, and I just love the colors of the fall and the different scenes you see around the city. It's so beautiful. And I'll pass it on to Zach. And I'm got to go get my phone turned off because the alarm keeps going off. I'll be right back.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Zach. I use he, him, his pronouns. You know, I'm excited for stew season. I'm a big stew guy. And I will send it over to Aaron.
Hi, Aaron Young. I am a camper, so fall is wonderful camping weather. So I'll be doing that almost every weekend. And who hasn't? I'll pass it to Janice.
Hi, my name is Janice. Sorry, okay, great. Hi, my name is Janice. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm excited for the fall for, I don't know, the best part's already gone, the leaves changing, I guess. I'm not a super fall kid. I hate being cold.
That's fair. That's totally fair. Lori, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lori. She, her. I love hiking, and this is the best time of year for hiking.
Great. And then Ubad, you haven't gone yet, right?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Ubad, she, hers. Fall, you know, this is going to sound really very stereotypical, very cliche, but I love a pumpkin spice latte. Oh my gosh, it really does the job for me. I haven't had one in a while. Maybe I'll go treat myself tomorrow, but I love a nice seasonal Starbucks drink. It really does it for me. I'll pass it off to Ken.
So the disadvantage of going last is all of the good stuff has already been taken, and literally every idea that came to mind somebody has already taken. So my name is Ken Miller. I use he, him, his pronouns. So I'm going to go with fall brings the end of the semester, and so Zach and Ugbad and other students who are not here will be out of my hair fairly soon and not my problem anymore. And so I do look forward to that.
Oh, love that. I'm still laughing at Zach that you said it's stew season. I haven't heard that one as much, so I love that. Well, I'm really glad that we're all in this space together. We want to make sure that we capture these conversations. So I'm going to be recording this conversation. This is just going to be for our internal use. Of anything we want to use like externally, we would reach out to you, get a release, etc. But I just want everyone to know. So if you don't want to be on it, you can, turn off your camera. But I'm going to start the recording now. All right, and so for those of you who haven't been here before, at these events, we break out into these rooms and have deeper conversations about, people's experiences with what the presenters talk about, and then also to kind of hear about community-based solutions. And something I just kind of want to preface the space with is that, we saw when we put the neighborhoods in and when everyone's introducing themselves, like people are from all over, and people have really different experiences in different parts of the city. So I just want to encourage us to, speak to our experiences, but also to recognize that, my experience might not necessarily mean this other experience doesn't exist, etc. Let's just keep this kind of like a space where you do feel really open and safe to have these conversations and to really listen, especially to those who are in the spaces where they are really experiencing this or have experienced this. And so we'll just kind of leave a space for that. So does everyone see the questions in the chat, or should I re-put them in there? I'm gonna read them out loud, but good. Okay, so the first question is, do you or does someone you know live in an area with limited access to healthy food? And it's kind of like all together. This is gonna be like, what was that experience, or what is that experience like? And what do you think needs to change to stop this from happening?
At St. Anthony's, there in Dutchtown off of Merrimack, we have two like food markets on the street, one on the corner with Grand, the other one kind of closer to Broadway. But they're more of well, the one has, sandwiches and stuff, but there would be more, you go grab a soda and a bag of chips kind of place. And the Schnucks is down the, probably at least half a mile down Grand or up Grand. And so when people don't have transportation, so, our food pantry does a great job in terms of providing fresh food and meats and, much beyond just canned goods. But at the same time, if people are taking the bus, they're given so much, it's difficult for them to even get that home. So transportation, combined with the, we need stores closer to where people live.
Yeah, definitely. Quick show of hands. How many of y'all live within like either 3 to 5 minutes driving distance of a grocery store or within walking distance of a grocery store? Raise your hand. Okay. And how many of you have always lived in a space where you have had pretty easy access to a grocery store? Okay. Yeah. So I think this is like the reality. Sometimes we can hear this and it's not always like the areas and the spaces that we're in or that we live in. But Dolores, you talk about, the spaces that you work in, the people that you work with, those are those realities. So I know for myself, I used to live in a community that had one Aldi that was probably about 10-ish minutes away, not convenient walking, took the bus there to get groceries a few times. And it was not that fun. It was really difficult to try. I couldn't get everything I needed. I had to like sacrifice things that I wanted because I simply couldn't carry them the whole way. There was a Family Dollar right near where I lived, but that's severely lacking in any sort of, nutritious food. And half the time it wasn't even stocked anyways because they were afraid of people stealing all the time. So there wasn't even anything there. And then I lived in Old North St. Louis, and I moved to South City, Northampton area. I have a Walgreens across the street, 3 Schnucks within like 2 minutes, like 3 different Aldis that I can choose to go to. All of a sudden I'm overwhelmed with all of the opportunity that I have. And that's just something that made me, I already knew it and I'd heard it and I had read it. But in that moment, I was like, I already have a car. Like my privilege, I already have a lot of things that enable me to get what I need, but that's not really what others have. And that's, you know, that's a problem. Like, what do we need to do to fix that? Like, what needs to change?
Is that a question for the group?
I mean, yes, just the same question, echoing it again. Like, you know, what's the experience like? What needs to change to stop this from happening?
I'd like to see if I could address what needs to change from a very high level. I work at the Regional Council of Governments, and often get to present on issues related to sustainability, of which food is one of them. And there's just a general lack of regional concern for people that govern areas outside of food apartheid areas, that it's really an issue for the neighborhood, or really an issue for the region. So they kind of just slough it off and say it's the market reacting to market conditions, and nothing ever happens. So there's huge issues that contribute to it, with regional leadership being one, and these, you know, hard to deal with market issues when grocery stores leave because of crime or perceived crime, or, you know, whatever other issues, and, you know, they could come up with lots of them. So there's big systemic things and leadership issues that need to change to fix some of the issues. And I'm finished.
Thanks. I think that is very telling, the sense of, doesn't seem like it's a big problem that's affecting too many people, or at least too many people that the people in charge seem to care about. So then it's not really an issue that gets resolved. What are some other people's thoughts about what we can do to deal with these food apartheids, and this limited access to healthy, affordable food?
Hi, I think. Oh,
Go ahead.
I think it's really a super tough question. As someone who's lived like in or near food deserts probably my whole life. I'm currently in Chicago, and I've been born and raised in Chicago my whole life. I'm a WashU student though, which is why I'm here. I think it's super tough in terms of just pinpointing a solution, because it's I don't know, I like can't even think of a real like tangible solution to a food desert, because there's so many problems that apply to it. It's like the infrastructure of a community, but there's also economic freedom or liberty that these people in this community have. Like, yeah, a really big problem in terms of food deserts is like just not having the ability to travel the distance to the good grocery store that's just outside of your community because you don't have a car, or you can't afford a car, and then your city hasn't put in the infrastructure for a good public transportation system. In Chicago, luckily you can get pretty anywhere via our public transportation system, but in St. Louis, that obviously couldn't be further from the truth. So
I was just wondering, you know, if there are mobile food markets in St. Louis, and where they go. Anybody knows?
Yeah, I know I've heard of, I can't remember the name of it. So, but I know like at one point when I lived in Old North, there was a mobile food market that had come through, and it was kind of like advertised on Facebook. And I feel like people who were kind of in the know knew about it, or, you know, had seen that post that day. But that's another thing. It's like, how do you get the word out to communities? A lot of people who want to help communities are not always from or inside those communities. And what is it, you know, what does it look like to work in communities like that? Like, you need to engage the people there on the ground. How do you let them know what's going on? So I don't know, Ubad, if you know anything about, I'm totally putting you on the spot, so it's fine if not, but anything about those type of mobile food things, or also just like any other things that people have thought of that could be helpful that we could use to kind of like bounce ideas off or like spark some conversation.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that's a really great question, Dolores. I know, just like Madison had said, I saw some mobile food markets that were in the South. Sorry, I'm trying to think geographically. Southwest part of St. Louis City, but I haven't seen any updates regarding anything currently that is accessible to community members. And that's also another thing that we can look up and further explore to see if there are current mobile food trucks that are around, that we can even share that information and those resources with you all. But I think, Madison, to your question of things or possibilities to explore to expand food access in St. Louis, I think for me, just even doing this research, one thing that I really found that was so interesting was actually Missouri is the only state that hasn't expanded. So in the Women, Infant, and Children program, mothers can, or parents can essentially use that food support to purchase fresh fruit and fresh vegetables at farmers markets. But Missouri is the only state that hasn't expanded that to allow mothers to purchase using WIC at farmers markets. So what Erin was saying, it's these like really high level decisions and policies that are put in place, and you think about how systemically that people, and essentially what we're speaking of in this whole entire series, is it's low income people, it's communities of color that are being placed in situations where they have no choice but to go to the corner store to try to get some milk, maybe some bread, whatever the case may be. And if that's not the case, they're definitely not getting a Trader Joe's in their neighborhood and not a Whole Foods. You know what I mean? So it's these systemic issues that we're really trying to explore, and the power of community and cultivating that when it comes to food access. In my research that I've really found was these community gardens that people have to expand for themselves in their communities in order to get some type of decent vegetables or fruits in their community. So definitely community gardens. What I found a lot of was just finding peace in community, and whether that was people offering rides to each other to get to a grocery store, or doing these community gardens, but a lot of it was in those spaces as well.
Thanks. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm going to bounce off of that and say, so I've lived in St. Louis now for 2 years. Prior to that, I lived in Columbia, Missouri, and they have a program there where if you are on food stamps and you go to the farmer's market, you can get double the produce for the price. So that was a really neat program. That I was pretty sad that they didn't have something similar here in St. Louis.
Yeah, definitely. Like that seems like something that, would just really help that access. I wanted to ask, since you brought up the community gardens, how many, if any of y'all have lived in communities that have or here in St. Louis or other places that have had these types of community gardens, or if you've seen these types of spaces used as kind of communal food spaces before.
I've seen 2 or 3 in South City, but I don't, I'm not connected with them to know, how they're run or if they're working well. I know at least a couple of years ago, the food pantry director for St. Anthony's was growing tomato plant seedlings, should get maybe this tall, plant them in January, February, a warmer house kind of thing, whatever they call it. And then, when they were big enough and it was warm enough to get them planted, or just in the pot, take them home and have their, eventually have tomatoes then. But I know that, trying to do that, in the city with the ground we have, you really have to, put a lot of money into getting good good dirt there to help grow the vegetables or whatever you're growing. So, that makes it challenging for a family to be able to do that unless they've got, resources already.
Yeah, definitely. The neighborhood I used to live in, they did have a farmer's market, or like a community garden, and then they had like a little mini farmer's market on the weekends where they would sell those vegetables, and they did do the double up on the food money, which was really great. But again, that Old North area is definitely a part of kind of the northern city in St. Louis, but it's also an area where they have been able to kind of attract a lot of the attention around like revitalization, have been able to get a lot of grants and like pour into that. And that's great. But not every community has that level, of advocacy on its behalf. So what does it look like to, build up that same level of advocacy? Because the reality is the resources exist. They exist in this, in our city, in the state, they are there, but people aren't asking for them in the the direct way that people in government need you to ask for them, basically, to like, or kind of the back route ways that you have to ask for them to get what you need. So I think a lot of us have also been talking about the systemic problems, and so we also need to think about what does it look like to target our elected officials. Like, what are some of the things that we can be asking of them? How can they control, or how can they impact, like, what areas get business, like how they once did with redlining, in a way that was really, really detrimental to so many communities.
Well, one thing that might help with several areas that the whole report addresses, is that it's so hard to start a small business in the city. The hurdles that the city throws at you and the kinds of inconsistent enforcement of city regulations that inspectors put on small businesses is a huge hurdle for people to self-empower their own neighborhoods to start the businesses that they need. So one thing that we need to talk to our elected officials about in the city is streamlining business permits, occupancy permits, and inspection permits, because it's really chaotic, and I've heard that from many people who have small businesses. And also, I don't know, I'm not quite sure about the details of it, but I grew up in Chicago too, Janice, and on the South Side. And the Chicago food market has a very robust small grocery store and small market kind of environment. So it's probably partially because it might be easier to start small businesses in Chicago, or maybe it's a population density. But you don't see the kinds of small markets that could empower neighborhoods here as much as you do in Chicago. So I don't know exactly what the cause of that is. Maybe I thought maybe the big markets like Schnucks and Deerbergs might have cornered the supply market and make it harder to get wholesale prices into small groceries. But that's also another thing that we could look at, is how much those big grocery stores that won't locate in the city hamper other grocery stores or small markets from starting up in the city.
Madison, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for that, Erin.
When you said you would live like 10 minutes away from the grocery store, did that impact like you or people that you know, for example, like buying fresh fruits on the regular and buying more like processed foods, for example, because of like the distance that it was? Was that like a big impact?
I would say definitely, because I mean, luckily the grocery store that was close was an Aldi as opposed to a Schnucks. Even though Aldi's produce quality is not always the best, it is still like at least good for the first couple of days, and Aldi is significantly more affordable than Schnucks. But I would say yes, I think it really impacted, because you really had to, think about everything that you wanted to get. Like, I had a car towards the end of when I was there, so that kind of transformed the game for me. But before that, I was all public transportation all the time. And I just didn't want to lug like 4 or 5 like bags home of stuff and, you know, have to wait 20 or 30 minutes for the next bus to come, because bus routes in certain areas only run every hour, maybe every 30 minutes if you get lucky. So I think that definitely did, you know, have an impact. And if I had always lived in a community like that, I would never have the expectation of such easy access to things. And that's also, you know, part of the problem. Because if you don't ever expect that that's what you should be able to have, then like, how do you know that's what you should be pushing for?
Thank you.
Well, I want to also leave some space for us to talk about the high home costs that AK or the Anna Catherine discussed as well, because I think that's something that some people have really, that's really been their experience. Their, you know, like that choice to turn on the heat in the winter or not, to turn on that air conditioning in the summer to give you like a bit of relief from the St. Louis humid Three Rivers sun or not. And so wanted to kind of pose the same question. Is this like your experience, or is this the experience of someone have you known? And, you know, what impact do you think that has, and what do we need to do differently?
I have not been in that experience personally, but I know people. I am a recovering landlord. And I tried to do the right thing. I bought high efficiency furnaces and air conditioners, and whenever I could, I replaced windows, but I about went broke. And you can't manage these old buildings in the city and do what you need to do to make it efficient for your tenants, and still, you know, not go broke yourself. So there's just, you know, I don't have a solution, but I had really bad experiences being a landlord, and it almost bankrupted me trying to do the right thing. So something in that system is broken, even for the people that want to do the right things.
Yeah, going off of that, I come from like the northern New Jersey, New York area, and I definitely see it being a pretty big problem where I come from in many parts of different cities, like Newark or New York City. And in a lot of cases, even when landlords do want to be able to help out, sometimes when like buildings are kind of just old and landlords don't have the kind of money to be able to help. And sometimes sometimes the incentives aren't just there. And I saw this being like a really big problem for a lot of people in the area. And I think it's something that really needs to be looked into.
Aaron, I'm kind of curious, since you've got experience as a landlord and almost bankrupting yourself, you know, in trying to do good things for your tenants. Do you know, did you ever look to see, you know, some of these, you know, like with a lot of these things, you know, there's programs out there to help with the issue. Do you know whether or not those programs are available for rental housing? So if you're a landlord, for example, and you know, it might be beneficial to have your units, you know, weatherized, or to, you know, put in more efficient, you know, heating and cooling equipment or whatever. Are you eligible as a landlord for, you know, weatherization assistance, you know, rebates from Ameren for higher efficiency stuff, or those things that are only available to homeowners? Because I honestly don't know.
It's a mixed bag. The Ameren incentives were no good for me, because it was mentioned earlier that the tenants paid their own utilities, so I would get no benefit from doing an incentive program. And if a furnace went out and I had to replace it, I just had to do it. And since I didn't live there, that kind of rent or that kind of assistance was not available. And then there was a lot of other things. Weatherization programs were not available to landlords. The tenants could have applied for them, but that would have been another huge kind of weird hassle for the tenants to have to go through to apply for something through like the Urban League to get their windows replaced, even though they were windows on the building that they didn't own. So it's hard, especially if you're just, you know, a small time guy like me. It was just me and my dad with 2 buildings. The scale of things didn't work for us either.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, Ken, because I think this kind of brings this dichotomy, and I think I didn't specifically say it, but we addressed it on the other, with talking about food security as well. It's almost like there's like there has to be like a multifaceted approach. Dolores, you're talking a lot about like, you know, food pantries, and we talked about other things that are potentially happening in communities to help, like, you know, the people in those communities living in that reality right now. So that has to be happening. And then we also need the systemic change, and we need we need to change the laws that incentivize like where businesses are able to come or how small business owners are able to operate. And I think in the same way, you know, with these higher home costs, we need the programs that can, you know, provide support for people immediately when they need it. People should not be having to choose between, you know, turning on the heat in the winter or not. That should never have to be a choice anyone has to make. And so we need that direct support. But then also, you know, if all of the houses are extremely energy inefficient in that way, and no matter how much assistance we're able to give, we're going to have to keep giving that. So we need to also have policies that incentivize like investments in, you know, revitalizing these homes and stuff. So I think all these approaches are so like multifaceted, because you can't just work on the policy, but you also can't just work on the ground level. But sometimes it's a lot to just do one of those sides. So like, how do we, you know, that's always the question of organizing. Other thoughts that people have just about, you know, about these questions, about things, you know, solutions, but also just kind of like thoughts in general, reflecting on these conversations, just how, you know, how you see these problems and what you think can be done.
I'm curious if any of you are involved with Metropolitan Congregations United, MCU. Madison, is it through your church or through Dutchtown South, or?
It's through, I work at Close the Workhouse and our City Defenders, and so we collaborate on a lot of things between those 2 groups.
Because they have an environmental justice beginning effort, I think, in Jennings. And so they're beginning to promote that area for environmental justice. And they're seeing it through the racial lens. So they're very much in line with what, you know, all these presentations are about.
Awesome. Thank you. We can definitely I would definitely love to reach out to them and see more of like, you know, what they're doing, what their approach is. So thanks so much for that, Dolores.
Mm-hmm. And I think they're collaborating with the Sierra Club as well on that.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah. So I bet Ashton and Leah, who other organizers of these events, probably know about that too. So thank you so much. Mm-hmm. Other kind of thoughts. So we're going to end in about 3 minutes, but just kind of closing thoughts about, you know, this conversation we've been having.
I definitely agree with you, Madison, when you said that it definitely is a multifaceted approach. We need to look into how can we redo the buildings in a way, or fix the buildings to kind of fix the energy sources, to kind of fix the cooling in a way. And also the kind of just like the policy measures that make this more affordable and that make it easier for landlords to kind of do it, but also how the city is structured, increasing vegetation in the city, allowing, you know, the heat island effect to go down, kind of just like the problem itself, like the cause and the effect. I feel like both really has to be looked at. If we can like increase vegetation in the city and just other stuff that causes that heat island effect.
Yeah, and I think for me, reflecting on doing the food apartheid presentation, if there's one thing that I can say to you all, definitely explore even I think for my presentation, I hope that it came across this way. A really important part was using the word food apartheid as opposed to food desert. I think that that's really important in these conversations because the way that food apartheid encompasses the whole picture of race, economics, income, geography, it really does make a difference in how we approach these things. And to all of your points of how we need to assess this, and this being like a multidisciplinary and a multifaceted approach to solve these issues, it'll definitely it'll make a difference. So the next time you hear someone say food desert, say, hey, that's not the word. We got to use food apartheid. So if there's one thing that you all walk away from this evening, definitely that. I hope that that's it.
Thanks so much.